Hello, for today's video, I will be sharing to you some information on what's the nature of an information systems problem. This is to give you an idea on how to present the research question part of your introduction. Remember that you will match later your research question or your statement of the problem with your objective as well as your conclusion later in the complete thesis. But for this video, I will just focus on your statement of the problem and what are the problems considered to be are expected to be solved by the information system student. So let me start with give you a short introduction about what is an information system program or the program that you're enrolled in, and what are expected of the graduate of the BSIS. So I hope that you're familiar with this one, that the BS Information Systems is about the study of application and effect of IT to organizations. Graduates of the program should be able to implement an information system which considers complex technological and organizational factors affecting it. So that means you will be focusing on the technology and the organization both. The focus is to study both of these factors and will include components, tools, techniques and strategies or methodologies in relation to the complex technological and organizational factors. Graduates are able to help an organization determine how information and technology-enabled business process can be used as strategic tool to achieve a competitive advantage. So after all, your purpose to be employed in the organization is to help achieve the competitive advantage of the organization. As IS professional required a sound understanding of organizational principles and practices so that they can serve as an effective bridge between the technical and management users communities within an organization. This enables them to ensure that the organization has information and the systems it needs to support its operation. So now somehow you will be, what differentiates you from the technology, the BS information technology is the process perspective and you're being the bridge between the pure technologies or the computer science and the organization. What is the advantage of IS is that you are familiar with processes in the organization and how to deploy supposed to be information system to the organization, and also understanding the perspective of the users. So what is the requirement of a capstone project for an IS? So here, capstone project is an undertaking appropriate to a professional field. It should significantly address an existing problem or need. So that means the purpose of this short video is actually to address existing problem or need of the organization. So that means we will not only focus on problem, but also if that would be the need of the organization, which is normally also an information system problem existing in the organization. So how is the research in an information system student is expected? So an information system capstone project, CHED actually requires you to have a capstone project. But for IIT, we are requiring you a thesis, which requires more theoretical knowledge in terms of information system rather than implementing the project straightforward to the organization. So your focus is on business process and the implications of introducing a computing solution to a problem. So you are more of understanding the processes within the organization and also the effect or the implication of introducing that solution to the organization. Is the organization solve the problem through your business process solutions, or did the organization benefit with the introduction of information solution or computing solution to the organization? In contrast to the information technology, so that conflict would be avoided in terms of the overlapping problem addressed in the organization by both IS and IT. IT Capstone project focuses in infra application or processes involved in implementing a computing solution to a problem. So although they have already processed, but the purpose of this one is the implementation, while the IS are the implications. That means while the problem of integrating technology to the organization is the focus of IT, IS will focus on what happened when the organization used the solutions. So somehow there is quite a problem in terms of IS, because you're not expected to understand more. Your focus is actually more on understanding the systems or the effect of the information system. That means it already exists in the organization, compared to the IT, where they are looking at the entire infrastructure or the organization or the systems itself, the application, and or the process involved in the putting this infrastructure or application to the organization. But in IS, the focus is what happened when IT actually implemented to the organization. Although this is a very limited part of the Capstone project, but this would differentiate somehow some of the Capstone project for both IT and IS. Although there are other perspectives, but this one is one differentiator of an IS and IT projects. Although you can still implement something, example, you can still suggest an infrastructure, you can still develop an applications for deployment in the organization, but somehow you will look at in the effect in the implication part of the project rather than the implementation itself or the actual what happened to the organization in reality or during the actual implementation. I will skip this one, the 4 principles of computer science and technology, because this is too much for, I think, to be discussed here. But here, this one is the knowledge, the data dimension, the knowledge dimension, and the user dimension. Why I am sharing this to you, because these are aspects where your thesis will revolve or will focus on. You can look at the data dimension of the systems or the processes in the organization, the user, meaning the experience of the user, and the knowledge dimension, which is in terms of the quality, validation, sustained, grounded, or consensus of the data. So actually, we are looking all here at the data or the processes of the organization. So using those perspectives, when you're looking at the problem of the organization, when you define the problem of the organization, you will look at the data dimension. That means what are the data needed by the organization, or the user dimension. What are the experiences of users on that particular system? Are they positive towards the use of that system, or are they informed of how the system will be used? Is it useful for them, or is it acceptable for them or easy to use? Last division of knowledge dimension. This is how the organization now use the data that is produced by the system in terms of informing them the right decision. So the supporting data, gathered data, presented in a different manner that will allow the organization to learn from the previous activities is the knowledge dimension. So somehow this can also be part of the problem of or need of the organization that you might need to address in your thesis. And lastly, so how will you present actually your information system problem? When you describe your statement of the problem in chapter 1, I would somehow require you to take up some of these important systems problem that you need to consider. Number 1 is information access, storage, or retrieval. These are problems of the organization that takes up limited access or problems with access. That means it might be a manual system or it might be a manual paper. That's why they have difficulty of access, which is also related to the storage problem of the organization because they might not be organized or in paper form, and related to the retrieval because when you store it in paper form, it takes time for you to retrieve the document. So access also, it might be lost somewhere else, and accessing it is a problem. So you might present your thesis in terms of this area. Second is information dissemination. How will you distribute the information that the system has? How will the user somehow access it, which related, but this one from the perspective of giving majority of the information to the public. For instance, the information dissemination of disaster management is somehow problematic because sometimes you will receive the information very late, such that disasters are already happening or is almost done before you are receiving the warning provided by the system. So that would be a problem of information dissemination. The third aspect is information and ethical implications. What are the implications of having a lot of information, for instance, such as information overload is one problem in IS. So that's one that might be an example in privacy issues. No, that's privacy issues. That means with a lot of information available, there are problems on the user's part that you need to consider because there are ethical implications. When an information system professional processes data, for instance, they need to take note of the ethical implications or the privacy of the users or the data that they are processing. Information systems development, this is also important, for meaning this is more on IT or ComSci, but this one could be the focus also of the information system. That means this is information systems design/development, meaning you might suggest design solutions for existing processes, or you might suggest development of a system, or you might also develop really the system of the organization. Lastly is information systems adoption and use. This is one of what the shared description of your capstone project. You are to determine how the organization actually use or adopt the information system introduced to them. You might discover that users have used the system differently as based on the intention, or they might have a remedy or workarounds with the existing system so that their task will still be accomplished even if the system is not designed for that particular user. And lastly, the generic problem is process-related problem. As long as the process might involve ICT-related potential solution, that can be one of the problems that you can be taken up as an IS in your thesis. So I hope that you've learned something. That means I will expect that in your statement of the problem, you will somehow state some of the problem or anchor the problems based on this one. So do not state, for instance, that there is a lack of manpower, although you will mention that there is a lack of manpower. So it might be a different problem when we see that is not an information system problem, but that is an HR problem. So you'll focus that on a different manner, such that it might be a problem of information access. That's why there is a lack of manpower, or it might be a storage problem because you need a lot of people to retrieve the data. So that's why you will say lack of manpower, but in reality, it was just a storage or access problem. Or if that was an information system adoption and use, you need a lot of manpower because some existing users are not really familiar with the system. So you need to hire new one for them because they are very familiar with the system. So there are a lot of instances where instead of looking at in a different manner, you will look at it as an information system problem. So I hope that you will integrate that in your writing for chapter 1. Next week, within this week, Friday, maybe I will share to you the format of the paper so that you can start writing. Have a nice day.